Summer is ending, and maybe that's a good thing. Every year, the heat hides more than it reveals. Behind the laughter, behind the long days and glowing nights, there are accidents, vanishings, tragedies no one puts in a photo album. The sun tricks you into believing you're safe, but safety in summer is only an illusion. In this video, you'll hear 3 stories born in the warm season. Stories where that illusion burned away, leaving only fear, loss, and things that should never have been seen. So put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and remember, not every summer memory is meant to last. Some follow you forever. Like this one. It happened near the kind of lake that keeps its secrets. A long black oval, cut into the pines like a pupil, ringed with old docks and the skeletal outline of a defunct summer camp. The cabins leaned. The bathhouse smelled of wet wood and mouse droppings. Signboards with peeling paint still announced archery and canoes, and the ghosts of last names, Meyer, Dunlap, K. Jones, carved into a picnic table with a penknife decades ago. By day, dragonflies skimmed the surface, and the reeds clacked in a wind that never reached the ground. By night, the shoreline dissolved. The tree line formed a single ragged eyelash, and the lake turned into one unbroken coin of tar, except where the moon scraped its silver. They parked at the end of a rutted dirt road, headlights carving a brief cathedral through the dust. 6 friends, 3 boys, 3 girls stumbled down to the dead pier, laughing too loudly, the way people do to keep the dark at a distance. The boards were spongy underfoot. Each step let out a tired breath and the smell of slow rot. A lifeguard chair still stood at an angle near the shallows, its paint chalking off in flakes like dandruff. Someone had draped a sun-faded towel over the arm at some forgotten point. A plastic whistle, cracked and colorless, lay half-buried in the sand. Phones into bags, shoes piled. They egged each other on until the first one dove. The lake accepted her with a soft slap and closed over the sound. The others followed, bodies white in the moonlight, vanishing to shoulders, then faces, then teeth. The water was warm as bath water, slick with algae that ribboned their calves and clung like invisible hands. It felt wrong in a way that was easy to forgive because they were young and July permits certain mistakes. For a while, it was perfect. A ring of heads, a circle of crude jokes and curses softened by distance. The slow roll of someone floating on their back, watching constellations misalign behind the pines. Somebody tossed a flat stone, skick, 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 and the ripples unstitched the moon. Then Nina said, "Lo, count us." They laughed it off until she said it again with a shape in her voice they recognized from childhood. Serious, brittle, the note kids reserve for blood. So they counted, mouths open, each name given a point on the circle. 6 in their group, 8 heads breaking the surface, 2 out past the ring, hovering. No splash from their arms, no snort of laughter, no breath steaming the wet. "Hey!" someone called, believing in the power of noise. "You good?" The 2 distant faces slid lower, as if a hand were on the back of each head. Gone. The water went calmer than before. the way a crowd falls silent because someone has fainted. They struck out for shore. Noise stopped being bravado and became task. Arms cutting, knees dragging through weed, one sandal lost to the suck of mud. The sand took them in on their hands and knees, scouring their skin with grit. They were still laughing in the way people laugh when they've just outrun a car. Then they saw the arrangement. Their clothes had been folded. Not stacked, haphazard, folded. Each shirt creased into rectangles. Each pair of jeans with cuffs aligned. Each phone placed screen up on top of its pile as if on a nightstand. The bags were zipped to the same exact point. Zipper pulls all turned the same direction. Even the lost sandal had been set neatly alongside its mate. No one had stayed behind to do this. No one had dry hands. Casey reached for his phone with a shaking finger. The screen woke obediently to a new thumbnail in the gallery, tonight's date, stamped underneath. He tapped it. A photograph opened. Himself in the water from a perspective that had to be from the beach, head tipped back, mouth open in a laugh he didn't remember giving. Behind him, two paler ovals where faces should be. The flash had caught something wet on their skin that didn't read as water. He whispered, "Who took?" but the question managed to be bigger than the answer. From out near the middle of the lake, where the weed beds deepen into a basin, a voice rose. It carried on the water like a sound threaded through the surface, not above it. It spoke his name. Not shouted, spoke, with a watery burr of someone talking with a mouth full of liquid. If you've ever put your head under and tried to say a word, you know how wrong it sounds. Imagine that, but practiced, corrected, learned. Casey dropped his phone. It landed face up in the sand, camera still open. The lens, a patient eye, framed the black sheet of water. The audio kept recording a long stripe of night, the hush of insects, someone's breath hitching. And then played back, and you'll hear it, the pad of a hand pressing up from beneath. A pale wrist, fingers overly long, knuckles joined by webs of something like translucent cloth. The hand moved not with a splash, but with a decision, groping at the border between lake and land as if testing a membrane. The sun came up anyway, because the world is oblivious. The six didn't sleep. They left without folding anything. By noon, they told themselves to doubt it. By sunset, the doubt wore thin and the story grew bones. Years later, after the city finally fenced the camp and posted signs, the county dredged part of the lake to clear a fallen pine. They found a camera at the edge of the muck, screen spidered, case barnacled with calcium. The last clip was corrupted, but the thumbnail remains, in a plastic evidence sleeve, the size of a fingernail. A boy laughing under the moon, and behind him two shapes that look like faces, only if you turn the picture in the light until you wish you hadn't. Some towns are made of summer. They store it like a seed, gray and quiet through winter. Then suddenly everything has color. Porch flags, garage sales, kids on scooters carving hieroglyphs into the dust. Evenings settle the way a picnic blanket does, and the air gets full of sprinkler hiss and someone grilling something that drips fire. In this town, the season had a soundtrack. The ice cream truck's jingle came thin and cheerful through the heat shimmer, an old melody with missing teeth, notes like pennies tapped on glass. It threaded through cul-de-sacs, down lanes named after trees cut down to make them, past a library where the AC couldn't keep up, and a park where the swings squealed and the slide burned thighs. He came the same week every year. Same truck paint, chalky, stickers sun-bleached to white flags. Same driver cap low, face always angled, just so the glare made a mirror of the windshield. No one remembered him stopping for gas. No one remembered him at the diner. The town said, he must live one town over, the way people invent neighbors when the silence embarrasses them. He didn't take money. That's where the story begins to tilt. The first year, it was a delight. He waved the little hands away when they offered coins, tapping the side of the truck with a knuckle. Free. A summer angel. Someone called him on Facebook, back when people still believed in those. He leaned and handed cones with a slow, careful motion, like the ice cream had weight a man should respect. The soft serve climbed each cone in 2 precise spirals. No drips. Flavors you remembered from childhood. A flake of something like salt glittered on top if the sun caught it. The children who ate those cones didn't grow. Not at first, no one noticed. Kids shoot up in fits and starts, after all. But a year passed, and the photos on the fridge stayed the same. 2 years and a Thanksgiving cousin towered over his friend who, it turned out, still wore the same sneakers in a new color. A girl named Millie kept the same gap in her front teeth. It never closed. A boy's voice lifted and then settled back down as if it had lost its nerve. Gradually, the pattern sketched itself on the town's face like a rash. Parents stopped letting their kids run when they heard the song. They pulled blinds, invented chores, raised the volume on the television. The truck still came, turned onto empty streets with the patience of a tide. Music tinkled into silence and out again. The driver didn't honk. He didn't call. He waited. Free things call to the parts of us we don't outgrow. The boy who followed him one July had the kind of restlessness that lives under the skin and makes it hard to sit through dinner. He took a bike, no lights, and shadowed the truck at a distance, close enough to keep it in sight and far enough to feel brave. He rode past a water tower, past a baseball diamond where the outfield grass turned to dried hay at the edges, out toward the industrial lot where the asphalt gave up and let the weeds win. The song changed as the truck left the grid, slowed. The notes bowed to one another like actors giving curtain calls and then began to stick as if the tape were melting. The boy pedaled harder on a road that didn't welcome bicycles. The truck pulled into a vacant lot between a shuttered self-storage and a yard full of rusting backhoes. It parked. The headlights went out. The boy hid behind a scabbed-over billboard stump and listened to the end of the song give way to a mechanical sigh. A compressor relaxing after a long day, a chest that had held its breath too long. He crept to the back, palms stinging from the hot metal ladder, face pressed to a window filmed with old sugar. Inside was wrong in a way the body knows before the brain does. The walls were too smooth, curved like a throat, and the light had no source, just a white that erased. Shelf after shelf ran the length of the truck, and on each shelf, children. Sitting upright, identical in pose, as if posed. Each held a cone with perfect swirls. The ice cream did not melt. The cones did not sag. The children did not blink. Their eyes followed him without moving their heads. He clapped a hand over his mouth, and his breath fogged the sugar film. No driver, no hum of engine or generator. Only the thin, careful sound ice makes. When you flex, it creeps the sound of something cold, thinking about cracking. He scrambled down and ran until the town reassembled around him and the world remembered what temperature to be. He didn't tell anyone that night. He tried to, but each time the story left the mouth wrong and landed as a joke. When he went back in the morning with 2 friends and a courage built of daylight, the lot was empty. The ruts the truck had pressed into the gravel looked old, faded at the edges, as though rain had had time to round them. That summer, parents crossed streets to avoid each other. The kids who had eaten free ice cream seemed thinner, paler, not ill exactly, paused. Their birthdays came and went, like calendar pages you forget to turn. One mother swore she'd lost a picture from her wall, a kindergarten portrait with a blue background and a shirt with dinosaurs. She looked through boxes and albums and hard drives. There were no holes on the wall where frames had been. There were no gaps in the albums. There was simply no boy. His name came off a roster quietly. The Little League team learned to count without him. The teacher's memory closed over like water. The boy who had watched through sugar glass told the story to himself every few months to keep it from thinning into dream. He told it to his girlfriend once at a bonfire. She looked at him the way people look at the last piece of cake they don't want to admit they've already eaten. Years later, at a yard sale in August, a woman sold a box of old toys and winter scarves. At the bottom lay a single cassette, unmarked save for a strip of paper tucked under the plastic window. On it, in a neat, childish hand, Summer Song. No one in town owns a player anymore. Maybe that's for the best. They rented the place because the listing promised lake adjacent, private, romantic, and everyone knows the internet only lies a little. The cabin was a rectangle of dark wood tucked under sour maples, its shingles furred with lichen, its porch railing soft as bread. The nearest neighbor was a sun-bleached RV full of tired towels. The nearest sound was the chorus of insects sawing summer in half and sewing it back together. It was the hottest week in a decade. The kind of heat that empties you, that sits on your chest at 3 a.m. and counts your breaths. Inside, a box fan screamed in the window and made an honest attempt. The curtains hung like damp tongues. The mattress took sweat and kept it. Fruit flies worshipped the bowl of peaches they'd optimistically bought in town. The air had weight. The first night, something walked overhead. Not the frantic scrabble of squirrels, not the curious testing of raccoon hands. This had tempo, heel then toe, a measured patience that belonged to someone who knows floor plans by heart. The steps crossed from one end of the attic to the other, paused over the bed as if considering, then continued on. When the couple flung the hatch open in a bravado they'd regret, the attic met them with a gust of cold that burned their teeth, their breath fogged. A smell rose, not dust, not cedar, not mouse, the green rot of swamp water stranded in a bucket. The flashlight beam caught the banal. Boxes, insulation, a frame with a spider stretched like a discarded glove in one corner. And still the cold bled down the stairs like a tide coming in. They made jokes about old houses. They made drinks too strong. They slept because exhaustion can force its way through doubt. On the second day, the heat thickened until sound dulled. The lake, a 10-minute walk down a deer path, offered no mercy. The water had the temperature of a body and the taste of something that had been closed a long time and then opened. They floated until they felt watched and returned to the cabin with algae lines drying white on their shins. That afternoon, looking for a deck of cards in the drawer with the jar of screws, she found a photograph. It wasn't remarkable at first, a couple on the porch steps, both of them squinting at the camera, sun turning their hair to metal. The porch was unmistakably this porch, the same split plank, the same ladder-back chair one leg short, the same chipped enamel basin hanging on a nail like a promise. The woman in the picture was her. Not a resemblance, the same mouth, the same birthmark half hidden at the jaw. The man was him, hair a touch longer, a habit in the set of his shoulders she recognized from the mirror. They looked older by a decade she didn't own yet. Across the bottom margin, someone had written a date that hadn't arrived. Under the porch, they found a box where the house's shadow stayed all day. Inside, neatly folded clothes with their sizes on the tags, a map of the lake with paths highlighted in pencil, a grocery receipt for brands they hadn't heard of, 3 more photographs from seasons they hadn't lived. In one, they stood on the dock in sweaters that didn't exist in their closet, mouths open in cold laughter at something just out of frame. Behind them, the lake had a skin of ice. That night, the footsteps began earlier. From midnight until 2, a steady procession, as if the attic were a platform where a train arrived every hour and discharged one passenger who paced and then left. The third time, the steps paused above the bed. The light in the bedroom sighed and went out. The fan slowed to a stop like a thing giving up. The hot air retreated. Cold moved through the room with intention, carrying the smell of reed beds and dead leaves under water. He climbed the attic stairs because someone had to embody the idea of stubbornness. The flashlight beam jumped with his heartbeat. Dust motes swarmed, each one its own tiny summer planet. At the top, he swung the beam right and then left, and the light landed on 2 faces. Their own, washed of blood, leached of heat, skin the color of candle wax, eyes with the glaze you see at funerals when you get too close because you love the person too much to stand back. Their mouths were slightly open, not in surprise, in waiting. The future likenesses stood shoulder to shoulder as if a photographer had posed them, hands arranged carefully at their sides. They wore the clothes from the box. He didn't remember falling backward, only air and the rap of wood on his elbow and the light cracking against a riser and dying. From below, her scream came thin and high in the sudden cold. Something moved in the dark above him. Not a scramble, the same footstep, heel, then toe, bringing weight down the stairs. He caught himself and ran blind into a door frame, and ricocheted out into the night where the air felt heavy again and the crickets gloried in their work. The stars watched like indifferent witnesses. The porch boards printed his bare feet with damp. They drove, engine complaining, until the cabin was a geometry behind trees, and then a rumor, and then gone. The owner wrote later to complain about damage to the attic door. The couple didn't answer. In the city, their apartment felt too small and too clean. Weeks slid by like hot glass. He dreamed of footsteps that learned his schedule. She dreamed of a camera that owned the future. Once, months later, a photograph arrived in the mail with no return address. It showed the cabin. Snow on the rail, two figures on the steps, bundled. Across the bottom margin, the same date as before, now passed. Someone had drawn a tidy line through it and written, rescheduled. They moved. They told themselves it was for work. The cabin sits where it's Saturday. The listing still exists. The reviews are a scatter of stars, half of them ecstatic about peace and birdsong, half of them incoherent about the attic being busy at night. The map in the box under the porch has new folds. The clothes smell faintly of swamp. Some summers keep you. Others practice. Summer is supposed to be safe. Lakes are for swimming. Ice cream trucks are for children. Cabins are for love and laughter. But some summers don't want you to come back. Some summers keep you. Remember, if the lake counts more heads than you brought, don't swim. If the truck gives you something for free, don't take it. And if the cabin attic walks at night, leave before it walks down to you. These were 3 terrifying summer horror stories. If you've lived through something like this, don't just keep it to yourself.